Folks, I'm going to be, for want of a better title, we'll call it Hebrew Language and Culture. I've been watching Pastor Mark Blitz while I've been on holiday, and he does a lot of teaching on the ancient Hebrew, and I, of course, just love it. For me, that's just pudding. So let me give you one of Pastor Mark's sayings. He says, don't turn down a T-bone steak because there's a bone in it. And that's good advice, okay? Man, somebody will say, I don't want to eat that steak because it's got a bone in it. Well, you miss out on the steak. And so don't worry so much about everything the preacher says. Maybe there's a few bones in it, but so long as you get a piece of steak, you'll be happy, okay? So let's start this new year with some biblical fun. When Moses threw down his rod, what did it become? Anybody know? A snake. Exodus 4:3, and he said, cast it on the ground, and he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent, which, good enough, you got it right, there's a snake. But the Hebrew for that word serpent or snake is H5175, and Moses fled before it. Moses obviously didn't like snakes. I mean, it was his rod, he threw it down, and now he runs away, he's petrified. So that H5175, the Hebrew word for that is oh goodness, I pronounce it so well at home. Norquish, a snake, a serpent. So, now you were all very clever, you all knew it was a snake. When Aaron threw down the rod in front of Pharaoh, what happened to it? Oh, you're not all so clever now. You're all very quiet now. Are there some chocolates there? No. No, somebody must shout it for you because I can't hear that. No. It did eat the other things that were on the ground. Yes. Okay. So our English Bible says snakes because the King James Version said snakes, and so everybody also just followed them. But the Hebrew word is different. It's not H5175. It's H8577, a tanim. So when Aaron threw down his rod, it became a tanim. It's used 28, that word is used 28 times in the Bible. And in the King James Version, it occurs 23 times, and they translated it as crocodile. Okay. So your Bible used a bit of license there. They thought because Moses threw down his rod and it became a snake, they wanted it also to be a snake. But the original Hebrew, if you speak to any rabbi, he'll tell you when Aaron threw it down, it became a crocodile. Why? They translated 23 times as crocodile, and the same word there they translated as snake. I think Aaron was dealing with a crocodile. And now I can better understand when it says that that crocodile ate all the other crocodiles. And you know what? The main god of Pharaoh was a crocodile, not a snake. I think the only reason that when Moses threw down his rod, it became a snake was because if he was scared of a snake, he was twice as scared of a crocodile. Okay, so I'm going to just give you a few of these little Hebrew translations as we go through. Who was Jesus talking about in Luke chapter 12, verse 13? The rich fool. Luke 12:19 says, and I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry. Who wants to hazard a guess? Who was Jesus talking about there? Maybe this one is more difficult than the snake one. I'll give somebody a chocolate if they want to hazard a guess as to who that was. Any takers? Okay, now I'll give you a tip, and then Once I give you a tip, then there's no more chocolates. It says, now take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry. That's a quote from the Old Testament. If you recognize the quote, you will recognize who Jesus was quoting. Ecclesiastes 8:15. So I recommend having fun, because there's nothing better for people in this world to eat, drink, and enjoy life. Okay, so I'm using a slightly different translation, but it's exactly the same. That way they will experience some happiness along with all the hard work God gives them under the sun. The quote, folks, was by Solomon, the wisest man in the world. And you know what Jesus said? Jesus said, you fool. You're a fool. We put a lot of store by human knowledge and understanding. Jesus said, that man that even the Bible says is the wisest man in the world is a fool. And you say, well, how can you be sure that Jesus was... Well, because Jesus quoted him exactly. And then Jesus confirms it by just 3 or 4 verses further down in Solomon, in verse 27. Look at the lilies, how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing, yet Solomon in all of his glory was not dressed as beautiful as they are. You see, God gave Solomon wisdom, but he messed it up. God never gave him the wisdom to have 1,000 wives. And God gave him the greatest privilege to build the temple, the first temple where the very presence. And what did he do? He said, all the hard work, shame poor me. No, privileged you. So don't get caught up in the wisdom of man, the so-called wisdom of man. You know, you can have a Down syndrome child that is, they don't like to use the word retarded anymore, but mentally challenged can be the most godly, loving person that you can come across. So don't be impressed by people's so-called brain or their intellectual status. It didn't impress Jesus. Jesus said, that man was a fool. Okay, next question. Are the Jews or Gentiles blinded in this season? What does the Bible say? Is the church blinded? Are the Jews blinded in this season? 1 Corinthians 13 verse 12 tells us, for now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall even know as also I am known. You see, we see through a glass darkly is about the same as the Jews being blinded in part. If I say, that person's partially blind, and that person's looking through dark glass, is about the same. Okay? Isn't that interesting? Romans 11:25. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part is happening to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. So let's not be full of our own, we can see and the Jewish people are blinded. No, we see through a glass darkly. In other words, you've got your dark shades on. You don't see everything. We don't know everything. We have to trust God. Okay, next question. Why are the generations divided into 14 in the book of Matthew? I want to tell you that that is a proof that the book of Matthew was written in Hebrew, because it only makes sense in Hebrew. In Greek, it makes no sense. So I'm absolutely convinced that the first book of Matthew, when it was written in Hebrew. Matthew 1 verse 17 says, so all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David until the carrying away into Babylon are 14 generations, and from the carrying away into Babylon unto Christ are 14 generations. What's this 14 all about anyway? You see, Hebrew is both numeric and alphabetic. So when you see 14, Hebrew people see David. And when you see David, Hebrew people see 14, because it's exactly the same thing. Matthew was telling them the Messiah is the son of David. So like we could read it, carrying away into Babylon unto Christ are 14 generations. They can read it, carrying away into Babylon unto Christ are David's generations. It was so clear to them that this is the Messiah. What is the Hebrew word for generations? Because I've just been speaking to you about 14 generations. Toldot is the Hebrew for generations. You know what's so interesting about this word? I don't know, maybe you people won't find this as interesting as I do, but I love these little things. I find them as pudding for me, and I was on holiday and I was just having some pudding, so just bear with me today, okay? Toldot is spelt correctly in the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 4, with 2 vavs. A vav is part of the Hebrew alphabet. And so there's the first time that generations is used in the book of Generations, chapter 2, verse 4, spelt correctly. Generations, from then on, is misspelt in the Hebrew Bible 71 times. Like the person who wrote the book of Generations was a bit dyslexic. They only got it right once. After that, they spelt it incorrectly 71 times. Old Moses, I don't know, maybe he had a bit of dyslexia. The second time that it is spelt correctly in the Old Testament is in the book of Ruth, when it refers to the line of David. Now you've got to ask yourself, why is that? And why did the King James Version spell it correctly throughout? You go and look in your generations, there's no spelling error. They saw there's a spelling error in the original, and they didn't want to carry it over into the English. But they should have, because it gives you a little message. There's a reason why, when the line of David came, that the spelling was correct. You see, when Adam sinned, the second vav goes missing. In Hebrew, vav is a nail. It looks like a nail. If you draw a vav, you can draw a picture of a nail. It connects 2 things together. So when Adam sinned, the vav was removed because man was separated from God. Isn't that amazing? So the generations of Adam stay broken until the book of Ruth establishes the lineage of David. And once that lineage was established, man was coming back to God. Yes, it only happened in Jesus, but it was prophetically spelt correctly from the book of Ruth. There's something more interesting about this nail. The vav is also just once in the Bible cut in half. You get half of vav and the other half with the gap in between. And it happens just once in the Bible. And it happens when God made a covenant with Phinehas at Baal Pur. Numbers 25, verse 6. Just then one of the Israelite men brought a Midianite woman into his tent. Phinehas put a spear through them. And in that story is this picture of the nail that's been cut in half. The yud, which is a picture of a hand, blocks a part of the vav. So in other words, it's a nail through a hand. And that picture is only found in this story of Phinehas. Yud, which is the hand, and the vav, which is the nail through the hand. It refers to the nail hand of the Messiah who will bring peace. Isn't that incredible? In that little story already, the sacrifice of Jesus is right there. Okay, let's get another one. Is Zion another name for Jerusalem? You people like to sing about Zion, you like to read about Zion, but do you actually know what Zion even means? And I love to go up to Zion. I've been to Zion many times, and it's so beautiful. It's a bit of a steep hill. I like to take a taxi or a bus to Zion, because if you're going to walk it, you're going to be out of breath by the time you get there. But it's okay. They sell you a nice water or a cool drink or an ice cream when you get to Zion, and then you're fully refreshed. The first letter in Zion is a fish hook. You see, Moses did print. When Moses wrote the Bible, the first part of the Bible, it was in basic print. When David wrote the Psalms, it was more like in flowing cursive. So it's not the same Hebrew throughout. It's like basic print, which is like picture stories, and then later you get David with this lovely flowing handwriting or whatever. It's different. But if you go back to the old, original, ancient Hebrew, this first letter in Zion is a fish hook, which is meant to catch something, okay? And Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I will draw, or I will catch all men to myself. The last letter of Zion, okay, so the first one is a fish hook. The last one of Zion is an N, which is a fish. So you've got a hook and a fish. I wonder what the two letters in between mean. The middle two letters are the Yud and the Vav, a hand and a nail. So Zion means Jesus will be the bait on the hook to catch the fish. Folks, that's what Zion means. Isn't that beautiful? I love it. Okay, let's jump to the New Testament just with some Hebrew culture and thinking. Who was the woman at the well? You know, we've all read that story. We've all thought about it. She said to Jesus, you Jews reject us. You know, because we're not Jewish, we reject it. If you know the area well, it's where Joseph's well is. And it's lovely to drink fresh water out of Joseph's well. Done that many times. But it's also the same place where Joseph was buried. It's modern day Shechem, or the little city itself is called Nablus. It's a Muslim town today, but it's in what the Jews would call Shechem, what the Arabs would call Nablus. So Joseph was rejected, the woman at the well was rejected. This sounds like a little village where there was a lot of rejection going on. And you know, in our Western way of thinking, the woman at the well, she must have been an adulteress, don't you think? 5 husbands, oh my goodness. And the man that you're with now is not even your husband. Well, you'd be wrong. If she was an adulteress, she would have been stoned a long time ago according to their laws, okay? She was dumped by 5 men, and the only probable reason is that she couldn't have children, and that's why she was rejected. Because, I mean, she can't have been that ugly if 5 men married her, you know. She must have been okay. 5 men gave her a shot, but why did they all reject her? If you understand the thinking of the time and the men, and they want children. You don't give them children, move along swiftly, auntie, you're out of here. You know that this woman that was rejected, coming from a city of people that were all rejected, where Joseph was buried, who was rejected by his brother, she's the one chosen by Jesus to take the gospel to the Samaritans. Isn't that amazing? If you've ever been rejected, this is a good story for you. If you've ever felt rejected, this woman was majorly rejected. Now I've got a bit of a theological question, a theological dilemma. Did Jesus send a woman to preach? Oh, my nerves. He sent her to the village. He said to her, don't speak to them, just show them by your good. No, he sent this woman, said, go and call your people. She was one of the first evangelists, man. Jesus said to her in John 4, verse 35, "The fields are white unto harvest." Now, what you might not know if you haven't been there is in a Samaritan village, when they gather to worship, they all dress in pure white. They predominantly wear white to worship. And Jesus said to her, "Go, because the village, the people are white unto harvest." If you'd been rejected like the woman at the well, this morning Jesus is seeking you out. Jesus wasn't left behind there at the well per chance. Jesus went there on purpose, and he sought this woman out. This woman who understood rejection. This woman who was actually waiting for the Messiah. That's how you know she wasn't some evil woman. She was waiting for the Messiah. She was a worshiper. And maybe you felt rejected. I want to tell you this morning, Jesus is here to seek you out. You're the one he's looking for. Maybe you're not as smart as Solomon. I'm sure not as smart as Solomon. You can just ask any of my school teachers. They wrote on my report, "Can do better," amongst many other things. I mean, I'm thinking of the nice comments now. By the world's standard, I'm not the smartest person, but you know what makes me smart? I choose Jesus. That makes me smarter than anybody, smarter than Solomon, because if you choose Jesus, you choose life. And you can be so jolly smart and so stupid at the same time. I see it so often. It saddens me how such brilliant people can be so stupid. Choose Jesus. And I want to say, you know, it's not a big deal whether it was a snake or a crocodile. I'm not wanting to start some new religion or anything. I'm just telling you what the original Hebrew says. The original Hebrew says it was a crocodile. And it doesn't matter if it was Leviathan or it was a snake or it was a crocodile. What I do want you to know is that there is a snake, there is a crocodile, there is a Leviathan that wants to get a hold of your life. He wants to destroy your life. But Jesus' hand was pierced. That vav that was shown in half, because there's a yud, there's a hand in the middle of it. That's Jesus' hand. So that snake cannot be a python in your life and crush the very breath out of you. If he tries, you speak the name of Jesus, and it changes the atmosphere. It changes the circumstance. It changes everything around you. And I want to close with a blessing. I tried to keep my word short this morning because my wife was also going to share, and then she didn't share as long as what she originally planned. But I want to close with a blessing. In Hebrew, a blessing is a barakah. In Hebrew, the word means to kneel or to bend the knee. The literal translation of barakah is come on bended knee, bringing a gift. So you ask, God, will you bless me? God, will you barakah me? What you're asking is, God, will you come down to my level and will you bring me a gift? That's the literal translation of barakah. And so, in closing, I want to quickly tell you about Milton Hershey. Have any of you ever had a Hershey's chocolate? There's a few of you who've had a Hershey's chocolate. Hershey was a wonderful man. He wanted to sell chocolates. And he made this chocolate and it tasted a bit bitter. It wasn't that great. And nobody wanted to buy his chocolate, so he went bankrupt. And he had to move back in with mommy and daddy at about the age of 40 or whatever. But you know, he didn't give up, and so he made some sweeter chocolate. He made some what they call today Hershey's chocolate. And he started again, and he made millions. And he built himself a castle, a lovely big home with lots of room for lots of children. And he got married. But like the woman at the well, his wife couldn't give him any kids. And the house was empty and he was sad. So him and his wife sat down and they said, what are we going to do? Should we adopt? He said, no, I don't want to just adopt 1 or 2 children. He said, I want to actually turn this place into a home for orphan children. And that's what he did. They adopted every orphan in the area. Every child that had nothing, that was down to nothing, he said, we will take you, bring them. And then he donated his personal fortune. He wasn't yet an old man. He wasn't ready to die. This wasn't his last will and testament. While he was still alive, he moved into a small little accommodation because this school for orphans now took over his whole mansion, and he donated all of the proceeds, everything from this chocolate factory, to the orphans. And when an orphan would arrive at this school, somebody would bring them, somebody would find them and bring them and say, this is where you're going to be living. This Milton Hershey would get down on his knees so that he could look this child in the eye. Looking them straight in the eye, he'd say, this is not charity, this is family. And you know, Hershey's estate is still going today. That orphanage school is still going today. Hundreds, if not thousands, of doctors, lawyers, you name it, top people have come out of that school because of this man getting down on his knees and looking these kids in the eye and saying, this is not charity, this is family. I think, if I'm not mistaken, his estate today is worth 16 billion or something like that. All belongs to this one little orphanage. Can I paraphrase the blessing for you this morning in the light of that? Oh, Pastor misquoted the word. No, I told you I'm paraphrasing it. Go and look up in the dictionary if you don't know what paraphrase means. I am paraphrasing it. That means I'm allowed to put it in English that I understand. Numbers 6, verse 24. I think you can stand for this. Numbers 6, verse 24. The Lord bless you and keep you. God coming down to your level, smiling at you and gifting you. The Lord look you in the eye and make everything right. Shalom. You say, how can you say make everything right? Because that's what shalom means. Shalom means nothing broken, everything right. I want to read it to you again because it was just so beautiful for myself. God coming down to your level, smiling at you and gifting you. The Lord look you in the eye and make everything right. Shalom.